state of California, and they work so hard
Let me know when you're streaming,
organize
AJ.
all the amazing volunteers and supporters in the state. So thank you, Cody, for all your help and your hard work. Give it up for Cody, everybody!
Aloha, San Francisco.
It's my time to say aloha. Come here, aloha. I've always wanted to say that. I watched too many town halls. I've always wanted to say that. Hey, I'm Cody. As you know, I'm the state coordinator for California. Gabrielle, please give me a shout out there.
Thanks for tuning in. Got a good crowd out here tonight. One of our most amazing volunteer leaders is giving me the introduction right now, Cody Keller.
California for Tulsi.
California for Tulsi on Instagram, also prolific meme creator.
He drove from the East Coast to be here to set this up. So give him a round of applause. Hell yeah, Steve. And Jerry's the one who helped us secure this venue, so give her a round of applause. Awesome. Hey, look, Gabrielle and myself, as your state coordinators, have a lot of information to provide you. We've read through many pages on how to become a delegate, how to volunteer for the campaign. Don't let it go to waste. So we're going to be the people, you can easily identify us because we're wearing the Tulsi shirts, right? But we're going to be hanging out in the back, and we're going to answer any questions, how to volunteer, donating, navigating the delegate process. I'm not going to go into it here, but you guys can find us in the back by the merch table, and we're happy to answer those questions for you, all right? Before I introduce Tulsi, and I'm absolutely honored, I have two things to cover. This is kind of the boring part, but this is very necessary, okay? We have something coming up on Tuesday. Does anyone know what's coming up on Tuesday? I was hoping you were gonna say Taco Tuesday, but that works too, all right? We have Tulsi Tuesday, Taco Tuesday, and Super Tuesday. That's a trifecta right there. Say that 5 times, and Tulsi will show up at your ballot booth with some toffee or something, right? So, Tuesday, California joins a number of other states in voting and hopefully choosing Tulsi as our Democratic nominee, right? Hell yeah, there we go. So the points I want to cover are, for those who haven't voted, actually, show of hands, who has voted? All right, so a number of you have voted, and a number of you may have not voted already. So for those of you watching live, and for those of you here who have not voted, like me, I love to get the sticker, I love to get the little orange juice when I go to vote. It's all a fun process. When you go in to vote, there's 2 ways to vote for Tulsi in the primary on Tuesday. Number 1, you can be a registered Democrat, of course. Get your ballot, fill it out, turn it in, do the other thing, do the other measures and all that. Or, most importantly, because people forget this, NPP, or no party preference. NPP voter right here. No party preference. So you need to tell the poll worker specifically to request a Democratic crossover ballot, right? Say it with me, Democratic crossover ballot. Perfect, Democratic crossover ballot, okay? Now, on Tuesday, for those of you who haven't voted, if you're a Republican, a Libertarian, a member of the Green Party, or any other party, you can change your voter registration when you go in to vote. So you can change your registration that day at the poll to change to be a Democrat, you get your Democratic ballot, vote for Tulsi, or you can change it to NPP and specifically need to request a Democratic what? Crossover ballot. Yes, thank you. So remember, that's important. Number 2 is what happens on March 4th? That's the important question. What happens on March 4th? Exactly. On March 4th, this campaign is just beginning. No matter what happens on March 3rd, no matter what the results are, Tulsi told us she's going all the way to the convention, and we're going to support her all the way there. So on March 4th, no matter what happens, we're waking up and we're gonna hit it like March 1st and March 2nd. We're gonna hit on March 4th just like March 3rd. Same energy, the same passion moving forward. There's a lot of work ahead of us. We have to phone bank in other states following us. For all of you watching online that may have already voted or have been in an early state or Super Tuesday state, you as well. We have a lot of phone banking to do to convince people that Tulsi is still running because the media is shutting her down. And we're not going to let that happen, are we? Exactly. That's what I'm talking about, okay? There you go. So on March 4th, we're going to hit it. Phone banking, donating. Any of you that haven't donated or would like to donate, tulsi2020.com/donate. Got to put that little plug in there. And you can help us continue to build out the infrastructure here in California. There's still a lot of work to do. There's families that are visiting. People are traveling from other states. We can help build the infrastructure, expand it, phone bank, and donate, okay? So number one, you're registered as a Democrat. You're voting on Tuesday, or you're requesting a change from to Democrat or NPP, and you're getting your what ballot? Your Democratic crossover ballot, exactly, okay? And number two, we're hitting it with the same energy that we did on March 3rd. On March 4th, we're continuing all the way to the convention, okay? Now, let me introduce Tulsi. Hold on. Let me introduce Tulsi. I was thinking about why I support Tulsi, and there's so many reasons why. And obviously I don't have the time to talk about them all right here. But the one thing I've been seeing in the last couple of debates, the one thing that many of us have probably seen over the course of our voting history through general elections and midterms, is that all of the eventual presidential candidates fall into the same foreign policy line of thinking. Bush, Obama, Trump, maybe the next president, hopefully it's Tulsi. They all fall to the foreign policy establishment. So when you ask me why Tulsi, I'll tell you, because I believe the industry of war is the greatest threat to our country and the globe. Yes. We now engage in wars for profit and greed, for control and corporate gains. We are no longer, as Tulsi put it, a force for good. So this is why I support Tulsi Gabbard for president, because she understands the cost of war. You all know she talks about the cost of war. When I watched the couple of recent debates, I don't think these candidates have a grasp on the cost of war, as Tulsi does, because Tulsi has been there. Tulsi understands. She's not an isolationist for all the Twitter trolls. She's not an isolationist. She understands military action may be necessary. However, there comes a cost that needs to be factored in when those military engagements are to be made. Those decisions need to be made. She understands the cost of war because she's been there. Because she's been there. She's an active major in the Hawaii National Guard, where she's been in the National Guard for 16 years. She served 2 deployments in the Middle East with a medical combat unit. And here in Congress, she served on the Armed Forces Committee and the Homeland Security Committee, among other subcommittees within Congress in her 6, 7, 8 years in Congress. So she has the experience and knowledge to know what decisions need to be made, what questions need to be asked when she's in the White House. That I don't think a lot of the other candidates on those debate stages understand. They have great domestic policies and things. I agree with some of the other candidates and some of their domestic policy decisions or stances, but they don't understand one of the things that Tulsi understands, that a president has the most unilateral power when it comes to foreign policy. And so she'll know which questions they ask when it comes to the foreign policy establishment and military-industrial complex coming in and trying to push her and engage her into wars and conflict in the Middle East and around the world. But this is why Tulsi. This is why Tulsi, because she understands the cost of war. And this scares the establishment and the media, and that's why they're trying to shut her out, because she understands the cost of war. And because she doesn't fit into a political box that they're trying to fit her into. She thinks about engagements, doesn't have to be a military engagement, just in general, any event that's occurring, she thinks about it independently. She doesn't come out on Twitter and makes a quick judgment knowing that that has consequences. She sits back. And for those of you who've been watching Tulsi for longer than this presidential election race, you know sometimes she'll actually go on the ground, whether it's Standing Rock or Hawaii with the lava flows, or Puerto Rico. She goes on the ground to get the source of information right there from the people, which is absolutely amazing. And Syria, of course, yes. And so Her message is simple. It's about peace and diplomacy. It's about peace on the global stage, diplomacy abroad, diplomacy here at home. Whether it's talking with a libertarian or Republican, I've met some amazing people. There's probably people here, whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, libertarian, member of the Green Party. I've met some people that have voted, haven't voted, but we're all under the banner of Tulsi, under that coalition that she is building across the country. That is why she's still in the race. She's still pushing this message, and she's still building up the momentum and audience to go to Milwaukee in July, to the Democratic National Convention, and all the way to the White House, okay? Her message is not what's best for Republicans, what's best for Democrats, what's best for libertarians. Her message is simple. It's about what's best for our country and our people. The safety and security of our citizens here and our service members abroad, and the safety and security of their family members when they sleep at night. It's simple as that. And so, I won't bore you any longer. In closing, I'm going to echo the words of Kim Iverson, and when she introduced Tulsi, she put it in an absolutely amazing way. She said, "Tulsi, thank you for your service to our country here on Capitol Hill, and thank you for your service to our country on the battlefield of war." So please rise and join me in welcoming Congresswoman and future President of the United States, Tulsi Gabbard!
Aloha, California! Thank you. Hi. Good job, Cody. Good job. Aloha. Good to see you. How are you? Good to see you. How are you doing? Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Aloha. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a seat. Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you very much. Wow, it's good to be back. Thank you for the warm welcome. The Aloha spirit is alive and well here, I see. Good job. My heart is full. It really, really means so much to me that so many of you took the time to come out this evening. It's crunch time. This is where the rubber meets the road. My heart is full, and it's wonderful, wonderful to see all of you here. I started out today spending some time with some incredible people here in the Bay Area. Guess where? In the ocean. Yep. Can't keep me away, can't keep me away. It was cold, it was windy, but I had the chance to spend the morning with a nonprofit organization called City Surf Project that was started by a local public school teacher who recognized as a surfer himself that there are a lot of kids here in California who, even though they may live just a few miles from the ocean, have no means to get there and don't know anything about it. Never thought about surfing because they didn't fit the kind of surfing stereotype that you see in the movies. So he started a program in the public school system. In 7th period, every day in school, they all pile in a bus and he takes them surfing. Today's Saturday. There's a group of kids who are in juvenile detention with a probation officer, piled them in the van. We took them all surfing. Got him out in the water. And here's what's so special about that. These are kids who would never, ever, ever have thought about going to the ocean or surfing. And maybe if some of you have never spent time in the ocean, you might say, okay, what's the big deal? There were a few high school girls there that I was talking to, and as we were about to go in, they said, we're only gonna go in knee deep. That's it. That's it. And they were going knee deep and then running back out of the water. They were afraid, it was cold, they were nervous. I grabbed them by the hand, said, all right, let's go. We're gonna do this. We'll start with the boogie board. pushed them into the first wave. It is priceless to see the smile of joy on these kids' faces. Time went on, they graduated to the board. Before you know it, they were standing up, cheering as they were catching these waves. Understanding that these kids are coming from pretty traumatic backgrounds, dealing with struggles in their own lives, and for that moment, finding that joy and that peace, that confidence, that sense of empowerment, saying, hey, I can do this. To me, it was just such a wonderful experience and kind of encapsulates why we are here tonight and what we are trying to do for each other and for our country. Because there's a lot of people across our country who have no hope, who wonder how it is that we as a country move forward, who wonder how we get out of the dark place that we are in now, caused by greed, power, corruption, a government of, by, and for the powerful elite, while Americans every single day who are struggling all across the country are not heard. How do we make this change? Is the answer more politics as usual? No. What's the answer? No, that's actually not true. The answer is we the people. The answer is we the people. That is what makes the difference. That is how we go from being in a place of anxiety and fear and stress and living in the darkness of this shadow that's hanging over us, to walk out into the light and say, you know what, nobody's gonna do this for us. When our founders wrote the Constitution, they were very intentional about those first three words: we the people. It wasn't we the Democratic Party, it wasn't we the government, it wasn't we the Republican Party, it was we the people. So that we never forget that this democratic republic belongs to us. And that our leaders never forget who they work for. But unfortunately, that's where we're at now. You have leaders in Washington from both political parties so busy bickering and fighting with each other that they have forgotten that they work in the people's house. And that their responsibility is to serve the people. We were just in Virginia recently, and we had a couple of nights back-to-back town halls, and I met a couple who came to one town hall, and they said, oh, our daughter lives in the area where you're gonna have your next town hall the next night. She's not sure if she wants to go because she hates politics. You know what I told them? So do I. I said, she and I have a lot in common, I promise. Who feels me on this one? You know what I'm talking about, right? You know what I'm talking about. Why is it? What is it that we hate about politics of today? It's lost its heart. It's lost the people. The politics is not about how we serve the people. The politics is about power. It's about corruption. It's about greed and influence and putting selfish interests ahead of the interests of service to the people. Because what is at the heart of this country, who makes this country great, is us. It's we the people. And we have the ability right now, at this very moment, to shape the kind of future we need to see. To shape the nation that we are proud of and that we love. That's in our hands. It's about the people. It's about those kids I got to hang out with this morning. It's about our loved ones, those who may be sick or in need of care and worried that they can't pay the doctor's bill and are therefore going without their medicine. It's about our planet, making sure that we have one that sustains for generations to come. It's about those words in our Pledge of Allegiance, that we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We know all too well that as powerful as those words are, that is not the country that we live in today. It's about fighting for that justice, fighting for that equality, fighting for that fairness for every single American, regardless of your race or ethnicity or gender or orientation. It's about celebrating who we are. So who are we? What is it that binds us all together? Freedom. The values and principles enshrined in our Constitution that says even if you are of a different party than I am, even if you have different ideas on how to solve a specific problem, even if you and I have strong disagreements, even if what you say makes me mad, I will put my life on the line for your right to say it. That is what binds us together. That is where our strength comes from. That we recognize that with those freedoms that we hold dear, that an attack against one of us is an attack against all of us. And that we take that stand, not being complacent, not allowing these freedoms to be undermined by the cancel culture police. The change that we need to see. It's about us. It's not about me. It's not about any politician. It's about you. It's about every single one of you. It's about those you hold most dear in your lives. It's about our country and what we want this country to represent, both for all of us here at home and the values, the message, the example that we want to set for other countries in the world. It's about respecting and honoring the service of our men and women in uniform and their families. If we have veterans, family members here today, please let us honor you. If you don't mind, please stand or wave your hand as you're able. Let us thank you for your service. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So many of my friends, as veterans, hate to be recognized. They hate to be thanked because it's not why they serve. It's not why they make that decision to say, if called, if there is a threat to the safety and security and freedom of the American people, send me first. I will lay down my life to defend and to protect. So I know Cody talked a little bit about peace and foreign policy. We talk often about the cost of war and who pays the price. This change that we all are here to seek to bring about has very much to do with those who pay that price. those who pay that ultimate price, making that great sacrifice, leaving their Gold Star family members at home. It's about those who come home, having difficulty going through what that transition looks like to find some sense of normalcy in this new life. But it's about every single one of us. Every single one of us, whether you realize it or not, you're paying the price for so many of these wasteful regime change wars, going and toppling dictators in other countries, the nation building that follows, this new Cold War, escalating tensions between the US and Russia and China, this nuclear arms race, the FAMs are being flamed, new nuclear weapons are being built, all of which don't make us any safer and cost us tremendously, cost us in American lives and taxpayer dollars. So even as some people still throughout this campaign will ask, why do you focus so much on foreign policy? They say, Tulsi, you're a one-dimensional candidate. That's all you talk about is foreign policy. Well, guess what? We're in a situation right now. We have a very specific example of how foreign policy is domestic policy. Foreign policy is domestic policy. So what is the number one thing that is in the news right now? Today, over the last few days, the last week? Coronavirus. Something big happened in Afghanistan today as well. It's not in the headlines, but it should be. But coronavirus, right? This is something that I've been very concerned about. We're all concerned about. Everybody's washing their hands, right? Yes? Because this is a serious threat, though. This is a serious threat. And as we've seen over the days and weeks that this threat has been increasing, in my home state of Hawaii, here in California, there have been a drastic shortage of testing kits for those who should be tested. People who are sick, people who have symptoms, people who've been exposed. And the criteria that's been set for who is allowed to be tested is so narrow and so limited, and we're told it's because there's not enough test kits. Why is our government nickel and diming these test kits at a time when there is a great threat to the safety and health and well-being of the American people? It's insane. It's insane. We are the United States of America. We have the greatest doctors. We're here, we have Silicon Valley, we have innovators, entrepreneurs, people who are coming up with the next amazing creations. Yet we're in a situation where here in California, as you well know, you had someone who wanted to get tested, was told no because she didn't meet the criteria, had to wait 4 days, finally she got tested, had to wait 4 more days only to say, hey, the test was positive with coronavirus. How many people were exposed throughout that period of time? You go to South Korea, they have drive-in stations where not feeling well, I'll drive up, take the test, drive off. You're not exposing anyone, you get the instant results. So, not enough test kits. Why not? Nickel and diming here at home, needlessly putting people at risk while we're spending $4 billion a month in Afghanistan. $5 million per hour. Foreign policy is domestic policy. You can't separate the two. And there is a direct correlation to the decisions that our leaders are making. When they blindly turn their eye and allow our taxpayer dollars to continue to go to pay for these wars that do not make us any safer, and have the gall to come in and tell us, we don't have enough money to make sure that you and your family are safe. This should make every single one of us angry. The first responsibility The first responsibility that every one of our leaders has is to protect the safety and health and well-being of the American people. Do what is necessary. Figure it out. Make it happen. This is one of many examples of why this sea change in our foreign policy is so necessary. Because I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of hearing people say there's not enough money. Not enough money for healthcare, not enough money for education, not enough money to protect our environment, not enough money for criminal justice reform, not enough money for infrastructure, not enough money to pay our teachers, not enough money for our first responders, not enough money for our scientists. There's not enough money to take care of you. But guess what? There's always enough money for the military-industrial complex, the powerful lobbyists in Washington, the people who are profiting off the backs of hardworking Americans every single day. This is at the heart of the change that we must bring about. This is at the heart of the message that we need to send to Washington on Tuesday. This is up to you. This is up to us. This is up to us. What action will each of us take to make this change? Because this is a time where we have to step out of our comfort zones. We've got to step out of our little circles. Every one of us, if you care about the things we're talking about, if you care about your community, you care about this country, now is the time to think, how can I do more? Who in my cell phone contact list have I not called yet? Which one of my Facebook friends have I not sent a message to yet? We only got a couple of days here in California, where you have the opportunity to impact the momentum in this election. The challenges are great. We know this. From the very first day that I started my campaign, we saw how the powerful elite and the corporate media immediately tried to undermine this people-powered campaign. We're still here. We're still here. They can't shut us up. They can't silence us. And we're here because of you. We're here because of so many of you who are chipping in $5 whenever you can. We're here because of so many of you who are making those phone calls, who are active on social media every day. For those of you who don't live on Twitter, you're talking to your coworkers and your friends and your family. We're here because of the increasing volume of the voices of the people. And this is the most important thing we have to remember. I just went back and reread a few of Dr. King's speeches. And he talked about in one of those speeches how we will march on. We will not be distracted. We will not allow those who put obstacles before us to even allow the doubt in your mind to say, all right, I guess we'll go home. We must march on because there is so much at stake. This fight doesn't end on Tuesday. It must continue. It must continue. Because the change we are seeking to bring about goes far beyond just Democrats versus Republicans. It goes far beyond the tribalism of us versus them. It goes far beyond the divisiveness that is tearing our country apart. It is at the core of our hearts, about every single one of us, every single day, making that conscious choice that we will be that light, that we will heal that divide, that we will stand together as Americans, recognizing that when we do so, and as history has shown us, when we do so, we can accomplish anything. We can accomplish anything. It's up to us. So before I open it up to our conversation here, I felt it was important to start on this note, because there have been challenges and it's easy to feel disheartened. It's easy to wonder about what happens next. Where do we go? That answer lies within our hands, it lies within our hearts, and the choices that we will make that will every day shape the future of this country that we love. Thank you all so much for your support and for being here today. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Aloha. I love you all. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, have a seat. We've got a few microphones. I want to hear what's on your mind. Answer any questions or concerns that you have. We'll try to keep them as brief as possible to get to as many people as possible, given the time that we have. We've got a couple of mics. Where are the mics at? If you could raise your hands. Here's one. Here's two, three. Awesome. Yes, ma'am, we'll start with you. Hi.
My name is Tallulah.
Tallulah,
So
nice to meet you.
Today. So you have been very loud about climate change, which I really appreciate because it hits close to home to you in Hawaii. And thank you. And I mean, study after study shows us that we won't be able to mitigate the worst effects of climate change if we don't address the effects of animal agriculture. And this is an issue that I don't really see talked about by any of the Democratic candidates, but you, of course, don't shy away from tough issues as much as other people do, so I thought you might actually be able to give me a straight answer today.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your plan for that, and also I was wondering if you would ever be willing to set an example for the American people and go vegan, and if not, how do you reconcile that difference between the principles you espouse and the principles that you actually live by?
It's a really great question, Tallulah. And it's one that I think should be asked of leaders in our country who are speaking up about their concerns about climate change, because it really does come down to this point where we can't just talk anymore. What are you doing about it? Both as an individual, what are we doing about it as individuals? And what must we do collectively as a country? And you're right, there's a lot of attention focused on fossil fuels, rightly so, the transition that we need to make towards clean renewable energy economy, 100% clean renewable energy economy. But so much of the environmental threats that we're facing do come from this massive industry of animal agriculture and factory farms, both here in the United States and around the world. And the point that you bring up about diet and making those choices about what kind of industry you are supporting, I am supporting or not, is essential. This really was brought to the forefront when Those terrible fires in the Amazon were on television every single day, and people here in the United States, people around the world were crying and heartbroken about how the lungs of the world were being destroyed. Very few of those headlines actually included the reason why they were being destroyed, though. That Brazil is the #1 exporter of beef in the world. And so if you look at what the demand is, they're clearing all of those trees to either be able to grow feed or to have areas for grazing. Direct correlation there. I am already vegan. Answer to your question. I've been vegetarian my whole life, more recently transitioned to being vegan, largely because of understanding what the consequences are of so many of these factory farms, not only in the broader scheme that you're referring to, but I've been through some of these communities whose waterways are completely polluted because of factory farms. The air is difficult to breathe because of those factory farms. The very direct impact that it's having on those communities who are they themselves working to pass local legislation to put a moratorium on these factory farms because otherwise they'll be forced to leave their homes. I think leading by example is important, and those personal choices that I've made are largely built around my concern for the impact that these industries are having on our planet. I think every single person obviously is free to make their own choices, but I think the more that we move our agriculture systems away from the archaic farming practices of the past and more towards sustainable, regenerative farming, organic farming, local and regional farming. So we're actually growing food to feed people here in this country. We have amazing ability to be able to do so. And making sure that in this agriculture industry that we are not ruining our planet in the process. Take one. Yes, sir, in the back. Yep.
So about 500,000 Americans died last year from chronic illness, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, obesity, Alzheimer's, all of which are linked to lifestyle and diet choices. And I'm curious what, as president, you would do to help shift so we're not spending 18% of our gross domestic product on disease symptom management and create a healthier population.
Yeah, thank you. This is a great question that also in the realm of the healthcare debate in this country that does not get addressed. I think just as we talked about in the last question, rightly so, when we talk about healthcare, we've got to talk about getting rid of the greed, profit-driven incentives of big insurance and big pharma that are driving up costs off the backs of sick people in our country, making people needlessly suffer and even in some case lose their lives because they're making decisions not based on what is in the best interest of the health and well-being of people, but instead of what best serves their profits, what will best line their pockets. But the thing that you're raising that's not addressed very much, I think is essential for us to focus on turning our healthcare system, which really is more of a sick care system, into one that is promoting the health and well-being of people in this country. So it's making those investments in preventive healthcare, nutrition, education, awareness, integrative healthcare, more holistic healthcare options, and looking at, and I've introduced some legislation to do this, at every aspect of this. You know, some of this includes, I went and visited Detroit probably a little over a year ago, and when I was there, I visited some urban farms in that community. And one of the things that they talked about was they had a lot of vacant lots. They want to turn those vacant lots into urban gardens so they could grow fresh food for a community whose local shopping, grocery shopping, happens at the liquor store. There's no Trader Joe's, there's no Whole Foods. Even if there was one, most people wouldn't be able to afford it. So it's seeing how we can best empower and support these homegrown solutions where people are being able to get educated and have better options in their communities. So this needs to happen through our healthcare system, but also as we look at our agriculture system, as we look at our food systems, as we look at food stamps, at every step of the way, we can see how do we invest more in the health and well-being of people. I think a key part of this is making sure that our physicians are trained in nutrition. This isn't happening right now, but it has to be. Because so many of these diseases are directly linked to what you put in your body. Thank you for your question. All right, we will come here. Yes, sir.
Tulsi, first I want to say thank you for coming to our city. We really appreciate you. Like you, I served in Afghanistan as a medic, recently came back and separated. And part of my question is, with what happened in Iraq with ISIS, us pulling out some of our troops, some of my military friends argue with me about your policy about pulling out and wondering, even though the Taliban isn't barbaric like ISIS, if there's going to be an uprising.
About pulling troops out of Afghanistan or Iraq?
Correct, pulling troops out of Afghanistan.
Okay.
The argument against it is, the argument against it is that there's going to be an uprising, the Afghan government's going to fold, and all that. So what would be our argument back to how would we, make it a good way of pulling out?
Thank you. This is a great question, given what has broken in the news today about this U.S. Taliban agreement that's just been signed or about to be signed. I'm still looking through what the details are. I've got some questions based on what's been reported right now. But the first thing with this agreement is the Afghan government has to be party to this agreement. That hasn't happened yet. And this agreement and these talks, this is something that should have happened a long time ago. Yes, the withdrawal of our troops needs to happen. It should have happened long ago. It needs to happen in a very responsible way. But to your friends' concerns about the Taliban, about the ongoing conflicts that are continuing between the Taliban and the Afghan government, the ongoing conflicts between many different tribes within Afghanistan, as much as those with great intentions want to be able to help the Afghan people resolve these conflicts and root out the corruption in their own government that's exploiting the billions of taxpayer dollars that we are sending there, that's not actually going to help people. As much as we want to be able to do this, we can't, and we shouldn't. This, like many challenges in many other countries, is something that we've got to accept that only the Afghan people can resolve for themselves. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be pretty. But we are not in a position in any way to come in from the outside and say, here's what your government should do, here's what you're going to do, here's what you're going to do, you got to make nice with this person and that person. It's a failure before you even begin, which is why we should not have been there now for almost 20 years, needlessly putting men and women at risk and spending more and more of our money there. So a concern that your friends may have or anybody may have about Afghanistan is say, well, what about the fact that that was where, Osama bin Laden had his training camps and Al-Qaeda? The original concern, post 9/11, why we sent troops into Afghanistan in the first place. That is a legitimate national security concern. It does not require the ambiguous and indefinite presence of US troops who don't know what the objective is. It's looking, okay, well, we've got Afghanistan now, they've got this peace agreement that hopefully the Afghan government gets bought into and they move forward. Our concern is making sure Al-Qaeda or ISIS, other jihadist groups don't take root there in Afghanistan. And we have troops who are in the region who can deploy quickly in, defeat the threat, and get out. Staying focused, what is our objective? What is the mission for our men and women in uniform? Stay focused on that mission of ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people, and not continue to have them pulled away into impossible missions that these Afghanistan papers recently released have shown that over 3 administrations, some of the highest ranking people in our government had no idea why we were still there. I hope that helps in answering your friends. All right, yes, sir.
Hi, Tulsi. Thanks again for coming. And so a lot of people talk about climate change. Everybody has a position on climate change. But one thing I'm not hearing people talk about is chemical pollution and pesticides and their effects on our health and on the bees and on other plants and animals. So could you maybe say something about your position on that, please?
Yeah, thank you. This doesn't get nearly the attention it deserves, even though, especially over the last few years, decisions are being made by the EPA and the USDA primarily that are really having a negative impact on us as people, as more and more of these chemicals and pesticides are becoming either completely unregulated or with very, very little oversight. Some of these chemicals being those that are banned in places like the EU and other countries in Europe, and banned because they've done the studies and recognized that it has a detrimental impact, whether it's on everybody or on children or those who are exposed to these pesticides, especially in large amounts. I've introduced legislation to ban the use of some of these chemicals that have been so egregiously used, things like glyphosate and others, that more and more studies are being found are having a negative impact on our health. So I think it goes without saying that, look, as president, I'll make sure that I have a director of the Environmental Protection Agency who will protect our environment, period. That seems like a no-brainer, right? But we've got to go deeper than that, because whether it is the EPA or the USDA or the CDC or the FDA, we've seen for too long people appointed to positions of power and influence there to make these decisions who are actually coming from those industries that profit off of the policies that are put in place. So rather than looking out for the best interest and the well-being and the health of us as Americans, which is their foremost responsibility, they'll make these decisions that'll benefit the Monsantos and the Syngentas and these massive pesticide-producing multinational corporations. And that applies across our government, which is why we need to close this revolving door of corruption in this pay-to-play culture in Washington, so that you can have the peace of mind of knowing that your government is fighting for you and nobody else. All right. Yes, sir. One second. He's going to turn your mic up here.
Our media has been weaponized. As president, will you be able to do anything about that? Say, support a real public broadcasting system?
It is so damaging to our country and our democracy that we are in a situation where our public airwaves are being used to divide us with people, rather than being objective journalists and making sure that you as voters have access to the information that you need to make your best decisions, are saying, no, we don't want you to hear this, we don't want you to hear that. We'll tell you this version of the story, or we'll give you a lot of exposure to one candidate or another. There's legislation, there's an act that we used to have in place in our government called the Fairness Doctrine that was repealed a couple of decades ago, that I've introduced legislation to reinstate as a starting point. As a starting point for us to take our public airwaves back. I support public broadcasting overall, but I gotta tell you, it's been very eye-opening to see how even public broadcasting is creating and presenting their own bias and their own narrative. It's not public, exactly. It's not. It has become a joke, unfortunately. So it leaves us in a position where more and more people are saying, well, where can I go to get my information? If you can't get it from cable news, if you can't get it from public broadcasting, a lot of people are going online. You have a lot of new media, alternative media. People are presenting very different perspectives and a lot more depth on different issues and topics. This is not an easy nut to crack, but we've got to recognize the problem, and we see how even as there's a lot of conversations around campaign finance reform right now, which is absolutely necessary and critical, let's not forget the multi-billion-dollar media corporations who are interfering in our elections and trying to influence you as voters. Yes, sir. Yep, glasses. Just one moment. Want to make sure everybody can hear you. They're going to bring a microphone to you.
Yes, my concern is with the punishment of journalists for exposing war crimes, and also and being punished by those who commit the war crimes.
It is. You know, we started this conversation by talking about what it is that binds us all together. It is our freedoms, which includes freedom of the press, and which is why the actions this administration has taken to target Julian Assange has set such a dangerous precedence that undermines that freedom of the press. That whether you are someone like him, whether you have your own show on YouTube, or you work for the Washington Post, every single person who is in that position or making those decisions about sharing information with the public is now at risk of being targeted by our own government for fulfilling that responsibility to the American people. This is a dangerous thing. This is a dangerous thing that we all have to take seriously and to continue to raise those voices around, because as I said earlier, an attack against one of us is an attack against all of us. If we're serious about protecting these freedoms, we have to stand up and fight for them. Yes, sir. Yep.
Hi, Tulsi.
Hi.
So what I wanted to bring up was diplomacy. One of the things I appreciate about you is that you'll talk to anybody. Yeah. And I just, my daughter and I were talking about this morning, which is, I don't understand how we can expect, if you can't talk to Fox News and Tucker Carlson, how are you going to talk to North Korea and Kim Jong-un? I just don't understand
That's
that.
a great point.
I'm just saying. So I would love to hear from you, your perspective on what makes a good diplomat. What do we need? The personality, the mindset. What's your perspective on that? Because there aren't many of them out there. Yeah. And it's one of the things I really appreciate about you. Love to hear your perspective.
Thank you. I like the example that you gave. That if we can't or we won't, there's a difference there. Both are wrong. If we're unwilling or unable to have conversations with those with whom we may disagree with on so many things, some things or all things, then how can we ever hope to resolve the conflict, even though we have right here at home? We end up in a place where we're crowded in our own little tribes of people who say, yes, you're awesome, I agree with you, you're the best, and never venturing out to say, well, gosh, there's a whole other country out here with people who have different experience and perspectives, ideas and views on different issues. Maybe I should go and learn a little bit about that. There was a quote that I saw on President's Day that somebody posted online from Abraham Lincoln that spoke directly to this. I hadn't read it before, and it really struck a chord with me, because he said, I don't like that man. I need to know him better. That's it. I don't know that man. I need to know him better. That lights the path for whether you're at the highest levels of our government, as a diplomat, as a leader, or if you are going to work every day and you have people around you who maybe you didn't like because of who they voted for, what cable news channel they watch, or some of the things that they say that you find offensive. I don't like that man. I need to know him better. The leaders in our country, at every level, have to understand those foundational roots of what diplomacy really is. It's about going in, and it's about treating others with respect, not wavering from your purpose and commitment to represent the interests of the American people whom you serve, and to be committed towards resolving problems with an approach that is not based on confrontation, but rather cooperation. To change us, to make us move away from this zero-sum mentality that we've seen even amongst so many of our diplomats for a long time, that says basically, in order for us or the American people to win, these other countries and these other people must lose, and instead lead our diplomatic efforts with a win-win approach. Coronavirus, another example of this. I heard from the Trump administration on the news the other day where they were talking about, yes, we have great lines of communication open. We're working with Japan, we're working with South Korea and seeing how we can work together to deal with this threat that the virus poses. But there's an outbreak that's happening in Iran as well, and this administration official said, but because we're at war, or in a state of war with Iran, we're not talking to them at all. At all. So even though we live in such a small community in the world, where we're literally one airplane away from this side of the world to that side of the world, and if Iran is left on its own, or another country is left on its own, this will very likely spread across the region and around the world. It's a very simple thing of recognizing, hey, we may have differences on different issues, but the more we're going around the world with this confrontational, adversarial approach that stops us from exercising diplomacy, that stops us from saying, even as we have our differences, there are some really important things that we've got to work together on as members of this global community, like preventing a pandemic, like focusing on counterterrorism, like focusing on climate change and protecting our environment. There's different issues that if we approach this with a win-win mentality, then not only are we serving the best interests of the people of this country, we are having that positive impact for the people in these other countries and around the world. Yeah.
Hi, Tulsi. Thanks for taking my question.
Thank you.
Just in talking with friends about, how to make a decision in the upcoming vote, a lot of the conversation is around, because of the fact that it looks like it's headed to a brokered convention, quite possibly, people are talking about, well, if I choose this person and that's not successful, then, how are they philosophically aligned perhaps with other candidates, and where might that all lead? I know that's a difficult question, and there's a lot probably that has to be learned in upcoming votes, but I wonder if you could speak to, where you see your own policies relative to some of the other candidates in terms of, whether they are closer to you in their political philosophy or farther away. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll tell you what I think is the most important thing for maybe some of the people that you're talking to focus on, because there are a lot of uncertainties of what will happen between now and the Democratic Convention, mostly centered around the fact that most states in the country have not yet cast their votes, and the voices of the people really need to be heard to determine who our Democratic nominee will be. But even as a brokered convention seems likely, I think one of the biggest concerns, probably the biggest concern that I have, is that we may end up in a situation once again where instead of the votes and voices of the people in this country determining who our Democratic nominee will be, that superdelegates will come in and overrule the popular vote of the people and then determine who that nominee should be. So this is an area where back in 2016 we saw how big of a problem this was, why we were fighting then as we're continuing to fight now to get rid of superdelegates so that the votes and voices of voters in this country are actually respected and that it means something. This is why I've been a big advocate for getting rid of superdelegates and having open primaries with same-day registration so that every Democratic candidate running for president can focus all of their attention on speaking to all of the American people about why they want to lead and serve our country in the White House. There are many different positions that different candidates hold. I can find probably areas of agreement and disagreement with every single one of them. I think the most important thing is, rather than trying to play the chess pieces of what could happen in a brokered convention, is really focusing on how we can best make sure that between now and that convention, that voters are the ones whose voices are being heard.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have time for one last question.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Tulsi. My name's Paul. It is great to hear from you today. Thank you so much for coming out and talking to all of us. In San Francisco alone, there are 8,000 homeless residents, and the United Nations recently compared the health quality of their communities to the slums of New Delhi and Mexico City. And even in my own 16 years, I've seen a problem develop into a crisis. So if you were elected as president, what executive actions would you take to combat homelessness in the United States?
Thank you. Thank you. I would declare homelessness the national crisis and emergency that it is. Because you're not alone. Sadly, those who are here in San Francisco who are living on the streets in these terrible conditions are not alone. That this is something that is not only happening in cities across the country, it's happening in rural communities across the country. And in order to address it, we have to treat it with the seriousness it deserves. And it requires us being able to break through the red tape and the bureaucracy that stands in the way of really delivering the kinds of services and developing of truly affordable housing that's necessary to really begin to tackle this crisis that exists in our country. That means federal, state, and local governments working very closely together on expedited timelines on how best to deploy those resources and building those public-private partnerships to get those affordable units developed as quickly as possible. I served on the Honolulu City Council before I was elected to Congress, and we have a major homeless crisis in my own home state of Hawaii, and saw how at the local level, even the zoning laws that need to be changed, because when they say, okay, if you're gonna build a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom unit, you have to have X number of parking stalls, you have to have all of these different requirements that stand in the way of building those units in a way that are truly affordable, when if you can build some waivers in the process, which happened in my home state because our governor did declare it an emergency, they were able to build tiny homes, container homes, and get people off the streets and into a place that they could call home. So it's this approach, and that's scratching the surface. It's mental health services, it's getting, yes, UBI, it's universal basic income, it's getting to make sure that we're empowering people, giving them not all of these so-called freebies, but giving them a hand up and some empowerment to the place where they can find their own freedom. Whether it's homelessness or any one of these other serious challenges that we face, it requires leadership and what I call a military mindset, in that you identify the problem, identify the solution, and build an actionable plan to accomplish that. Get past the partisanship, get past the, well, I can't even consider that idea because a Republican happened to bring it to the table. Get past all of these barriers that are standing in the way of progress and focus on solutions, focus on results. And so this is what I want to leave you with here tonight. And I'm sorry we don't have more time. We need a new generation of leadership in this country, one that brings a fresh perspective to solving these age-old problems that we are facing. And you need to have the confidence that your president has the experience to turn that vision into reality in two important ways. Number one, that you can go to sleep at night and rest easy knowing that you have a commander-in-chief who is prepared to do the job on day one. I have that experience that's enabled me to do that. And you need to have the confidence and the peace of mind to know that as we're talking about solving problems, that you'll have a president who can work with Congress no matter which way the partisan winds blow to actually get those things done. We don't live in a dictatorship. We have co-equal branches of government. The executive authority of the president has been abused for too long. We need to work with Congress to actually be able to execute these plans that we're talking about. My first 6 years in Congress as a Democrat were under Republican majority. I have that experience of building those bridges across party lines, those relationships, to where you know as we are coming together as a country, every one of us, not just leaders in Washington, but every one of us saying, hey, here's a great idea to how we can solve these problems, that we'll be able to do so in Congress, breaking through those partisan barriers, making sure that our sole focus every single day is on serving you, working for you. These are the leaders that I'll surround myself with in my administration, those who are truly committed to these soldiers' values of putting service above self, of restoring honor and respect and integrity into our government, so that we can have a government that is truly of, by, and for the people. This is what our campaign is all about. And I'm so grateful for your support that's made this possible. And that every single day, I ask you to think about how can we do more. Make sure that when you go and cast your votes on Tuesday that you're not driving alone. Your car better be full of people. Grab who you can. Make sure that we don't have that low turnout. Make sure that our voices are heard, because this is our time. And this is the choice we have before us. Let's take that stand for the people, for peace, for our future. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Aloha. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Aloha, everybody. Can I please have your attention? So, unfortunately, Tulsi has an engagement to attend, so we're out of time, unfortunately. But we will take 4 if everyone could please just stay where you are. Nobody move. Thank you. We will take 4 pictures from different angles of the room. So stay where you are, and then we'll post it on social media, and you could just either tag yourself or grab it from there, okay? We'll be right back. So just stay